what I do hope to show people is that just because something's never been done doesn't mean it can't be done, right? Just give it a go. Just try. What's the worst that can happen? If you have a dream and you have a vision and you have a mission that you really strongly believe in, it's not easy, but it's not impossible.
Welcome to Saving Wildlife with me, Sam Williams. This is where we get to hear from amazing conservationists about their life and work and all the incredible things they do to save wildlife. Louisa, it's great to have you here and to talk to you about your conservation work with dolphins and dugongs and whales. I have a sort of a bucket list ambition to swim with a megapod of dolphins, although I appreciate that might be a romanticized idea and you can keep me right on that. But you must have had amazing encounters with these incredible animals.
I've spent the last 20 years almost studying them, trying to protect them, understanding their ecology, their life, their secret lives. And certainly, I've had quite a number of incredible experiences when I was doing my PhD fieldwork in Oman, out in the Arabian Sea. And then, of course, also in more recent years, working in Malaysia, working with my nonprofit Marecet and doing our fieldwork there. I've had an amazing encounter, unexpected encounter with a baby dugong while diving underwater.
Yeah.
That was pretty incredible. We were collecting some samples and we were just packing up, and I kept hearing this bird chirp. And I thought maybe, because we were in very shallow water, like three meters, and I thought maybe there were some seabirds just above, the water chirping away. But then the chirp kept getting louder and louder, and then all of a sudden, this baby dugong just swims right past us, chirping frantically. So dugongs chirp, right?
Wow.
Make these bird-like sounds.
It's not what you would expect
No,
from a big...
lots of people think they moo like a cow.
Yeah, right.
Right? But no, they don't. So they chirp, and this baby dugong was frantically chirping around us. And I think it got separated from mum for some reason and saw there was a bunch of divers in the water and thought, oh, maybe it's mum. Came around, chirp, 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 chirp. Not mum. Swims away. And we were so shocked. It took us a while to process what we were witnessing underwater. The water is a bit turbid. Like between us, this distance, you wouldn't be able to see already.
Really?
Yeah.
That
So
bad?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We call it sugarcane juice water. It's a bit turbid. It's just the way the environment is. And it swims off, so the chirp gets more faint. And while it's swimming past us, I had to tap to my volunteer. She had a camera on her to get her to record because everyone was just stunned. It almost like we forgot how to breathe or think underwater. It comes around again a second time. Chirp, chirp, chirp. You're not mum. Goes off again. And then in the distance, I thought I could make out like a dark shadow of like a larger animal. So I suspect that somehow it was chirping, 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 and mum located it again and they were reunited.
Oh, nice.
But that, I've been studying dugongs in Malaysia for 11 years now, and that's the one and only time we've ever seen them underwater, and just by chance.
Really?
Yeah.
So because it's so turbid, you just don't see them. Do you see them from the boat though? If you're
We see them from the boat. We
Right.
see them if we're flying a drone or flying in an aircraft, if they're there. But definitely diving is a lot more difficult. We'll always see traces of dugong. So we'll find their poop floating on the water or on the seagrass bed or just on the seabed. We'll see their feeding trails. So we know, okay, dugong was just here. We'll see fragments of seagrass just floating around in the water.
And that's what they eat, isn't it?
Yes,
They've got like
yes.
this. I picture them. I'm going to wonder if you've got a way to describe that. I picture their face as being fairly flat, and I assume that's kind of like how they then graze on the grass.
They have a downward facing mouth,
Right.
and like a muzzle, right? And so they act like a hoover. They just sort of graze and they uproot everything in the path that they're grazing. That's how they leave these trails. Just imagine if you were to take a vacuum cleaner or a lawnmower and just mow the lawn, and it leaves this bald patch in the field. That's what a feeding trail looks like.
And the dugong, there's dugongs and manatees, and a dugong has like a whale-shaped tail, and a manatee has like the round tail.
Yes.
Or is that way
Correct.
around?
Yeah.
Okay, I totally
Good
knew
job.
that. And do they have pectoral fins
Yes,
as well?
they do have pectoral fins. Unlike cetaceans that have blowholes, dugongs and manatees have nostrils
Right.
just at the tip of their
so they
muzzle.
come up.
So they just surface. Sometimes they barely break the surface. They just stick the two nostrils up, breathe, and then go back down. Yeah, and they don't have a dorsal fin. They don't leap. They don't, they don't do leapy things like dolphins do.
I guess I imagine they are kind of slow and steady away, a bit like cows, most of the time. Do they ever get excited and do cool stuff?
So most people think that they are slow because they're big, they're chunky. They can get up to 400-500 kilograms, a full adult, right?
Wow.
So they're big animals, right? A big animal that feeds feeds only on seagrass. They need about 40 to 50 kilograms of seagrass a day to maintain
Really?
this biomass. So I always tell people, can you imagine yourself eating 40 kilograms of lettuce in an entire day? That's a lot, yeah. So anyway, they're huge, but they're fast. They can be fast. So when they're swimming, they do just swim and go around. I mean, there's no need to hurry. But if they needed to exit the scene, they can.
Right.
Like
And
in a split second.
is there a predator? Do they have a...
I think natural predators probably are sharks in
Okay.
our area, maybe bull sharks. But so far, we've never seen any animal with like a big bull shark wound or any stranded dugong that washed ashore dead that had a shark bite wound per se. Yeah.
So, in addition to dugongs, your organization's working with some different dolphins, porpoises. I've seen the little black porpoise, which is the finless porpoise.
Yep.
And then you're also now, I think it's a more recent thing, doing more maybe pelagic stuff or offshore stuff with whales.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more. Tell us about the range of species then.
So one of the things why I established Marecet 13 years ago now was because when I was a teenager, I dreamt of being a dolphin researcher. I went through this dolphin obsessed craze as a teen, and during that time, I was trying to find out more information about dolphins in Malaysia. I mean, this was before the time of powerful search engines like we have today, right? This is the 90s.
So we used to write letters.
Yeah, write letters, and I would scour magazines and newspapers, and I couldn't find much information at the time about dolphins in Malaysia. So teenager me said, okay, perhaps this is one way that I can fill the gap. Someday when I grow up, I want to become a dolphin scientist and start my own institution and contribute to filling this gap. And of course, also understanding more about them so that we can protect them. Because even back in the 90s, I was already seeing articles in the magazines and newspapers of marine life being killed by plastic bag ingestion or pollution and things like that. So it was already a thing back then. I mean, we're talking about 30 years ago now. So it was really, Marecet was established to fill those gaps about what do we have in our country in terms of marine mammals? Where are they distributed? How many are there? What are the threats? And what can we do?
Right.
Yeah. So science always forms the foundation of the work that we do at Marecet, right? I always say that I don't want to be a search engine respondent, right? If you were to ask me something about the animals in our country, I would hope that most of what I'm able to tell you comes from the research that we've done versus let me Google it, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, so it really started with the basics. What's there? What species? Where are they found? How does their distribution overlap with human activities? What is the magnitude of these overlaps? Where do they move? How do they use the habitat? Are certain areas important for breeding, feeding, socializing? Are certain areas movement corridors from point A to point B? Or are they very localized? Do we need to be concerned about human activities in these movement corridors, in these core habitat areas? So a lot of that science we do is to understand the ecology and the conservation needs. But then that science needs to be applied. It has to, go somewhere. So we put it towards education programs as well as recommendations to our decision makers.
For you personally, was it a science? Did this come from the desire to do science, or it sounds like you were aware of the conservation need early on? So it wasn't just like, oh, I'll do science because that's what people do, but you already knew you kind of wanted to make a difference. Is that be fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because I think Yeah, yeah. For me, it was kind of similar, and but it also seemed like the only path in was science, and I think lots of conservationists get to their role through being a biologist. But I know that you have the same view that conservation is so much more than just biology. And when you run your organization, you've got all different skill sets in there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think 15-year-old me just wanted to be a dolphin scientist and save the world, save the dolphins, right? And even at 27 or 28, when I co-founded Marecet in 2012, yeah, I can't do the math now, but anyway, back then,
Yeah, me neither.
whatever age I was then, much younger, uh, when we finally established Marecet, and when even before that, when I first returned from overseas after my PhD to sort of kickstart this career that I dreamt of all my life in Malaysia, I thought, all right, this is it. I'm now a qualified dolphin scientist, and I'm going to go out and study dolphins for the rest of my life and live happily ever after. I literally had that very simplistic, naive mindset. Little did I know at the time that, of course, if you want to do conservation work, it's so much more than just the science. I knew from the start that science is important because we need to have strong data, robust data to be able to provide recommendations for conservation, right? We can't go with gut feelings and things like that. And when I say science, of course, natural sciences, but through the course of the years of learning how to do conservation and running NGOs, I also learned to appreciate and realize that social science subjects are just as important to understand the human dimension of any conservation issue or environmental conflict and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the learning curve for me was very steep, from childhood dream, simplistic save the world, save the dolphins kind of plan to realizing that, oh, conservation is complicated. It's a mesh of things. There's a huge human dimension, and it's not just about studying dolphins for the rest of my life because what after that? And yeah, just having to learn to interact with stakeholders, local communities in places where we work, understanding people's points of view as well. What I love and what I've obsessed about all my life might not be what people are passionate about. And maybe because they can't afford to be passionate about dolphins because they're thinking how next to buy milk formula for their kids or diapers or whatever, right? So it's really been a learning process of going from just loving dolphins and having this tough tunnel vision for them to understanding that they act as a flagship or a mascot to promote conservation. But that we also need to consider all the elements surrounding them and their habitat and their lives, and how can we find a common ground for everyone to benefit and thrive. And I think, as we say in the conservation world, coexist.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that journey, what was one of the bigger surprises for you as you sort of uh, you found yourself running an organization?
That I would eventually slowly cease to be a dolphin scientist or a marine mammal scientist full time to just doing it part time, in the sense that now I have to run the organization, right? It's come to a point where I have to ensure that Marecet keeps running, people can get paid their salaries, that we have budget for the next 2 years, creating new programs that are relevant to the current issues, understanding local community needs, stakeholder needs, where our government prioritizes conservation and things like that. So ideation, innovating our work, etc. So managing, my team and staff members and things like that. So certainly my role as a scientist has much reduced and shrunk to maybe 5 or 10% of the whole total picture. And there's a great team who I've trained and who now carry out a lot of the field work and the data analysis. I still oversee, of course, analysis and conclusions and discussion of the results, interpretation of the results. I do all that still,
Right.
and I get to hop into field work as and when my schedule permits. One, to just keep my feet in the field, and of course, two, to just see how the projects are going, how the animals are doing for myself. But yeah, it's of course changed. I am now more administrator, organization runner,
Yeah.
more than I am a scientist per se. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I've met several of your team, and they all seem very happy. Is that it seems like you must have a, a great culture in the organization, which is a tribute to you for leading that. Um, do you find that you sort of take energy from them and their enthusiasm for it, and just that helps keep you going and keeps you connected? Do you have particular other than getting into the field, are there particular things you do that keep that energy going for you?
I think uh, I think you would well understand, as with many of our conservationist peers, this is it can be a very unforgiving field of work. It's like a battlefield that we get onto. I think many people who have not actually entered and worked deep in conservation, whether it's terrestrial, marine, doesn't matter, don't understand what a struggle it can be working. I mean, there's so many things. And at the end of the day, we are also human, right? We have other personal interests and hobbies outside of work, though we are passionate about what we do, right? So of course there have been times where it's frustrating, tiring, whatever, some issue, something's not going the way we want it to. And of course, there have been many times that I have felt very low, burnt out. I just feel like, is this worth it? I want to give up. And also, not to forget, I've been hustling, trying to do this, make this dream come alive and keep it alive for about 20 to 30 years. I mean, that's just all I've focused my energy on, right? So it comes a point where I'm finally where I am, and I'll finally where I want to be, and then I'm tired. I'm exhausted, not just physically, but everything, emotionally, physically, mentally. But anyway, long story short, what keeps me going, of course, is seeing the team that I've managed to raise and put together, watching their commitment, their own commitment to the cause, their dedication, and them making this work, and the mission and vision as much theirs as it is mine or Firal's. So we're on this thing together, right? They're working alongside me. They're not working under me, right? So it's that sort of thing that I think is important. So seeing them grow, many of them started out as volunteers for Marecet. And then many of them now work with me. Some of them did their PhDs under me. I supervise them. And now they've become scientists and conservationists in their own right. So I'm very proud of that. And I think that gives me a sense of purpose. And also sometimes when we've done something and somebody sends me a message on social media or email or text, or a friend's child, saw something that Marecet did, or watched a little documentary that we have out on YouTube or whatever. And then they send a message saying how much seeing what we do impacted them, moved them, and they got them interested to do this or that. Or my kid is going to go off now to the flea market next week and set up a booth to promote dolphin conservation and Marecet's work. I mean, it's these little moments where you realize you're actually very visible to the public. Because there are many times when I do find that, is anyone even noticing, not noticing me, but is anyone even noticing these efforts that we put in to try and make the world a better place? Does anybody care? Because there's so many things in the world today, the world that we live in today, that works against what we stand for, what we're passionate about, right? And we've been called tree huggers, dolphin huggers. You're just on your own agenda, whatever. So there are times that I wonder if this is worth it at all. So when you get a little message of encouragement, you're like, okay, so it was worth it after all, because there are people who are paying attention and it is making an impact. Or even opportunities for volunteering that we have provided through Marecet, and where people take that experience and carve their own path in life, where there is some kind of link to conservation or environmental work. We had one volunteer, she's from Holland, and she came and volunteered with us, fresh out of I think high school. And afterwards, she went on to pursue her master's, I think, studying dolphins, and then onward to her PhD um, in the Azores, where she then started her own dolphin research project there. And it's just seeing these kind of stories and growth that sort of not originated from Marecet, but that we gave them an experience that helped carve part of their journey,
Yeah.
right? It always
And
feels very satisfying.
you're reaching a lot of children in the community, because I've seen you've got the traveling van exhibit
Yeah.
thing. Tell me a bit more about that.
So in 2015, I was at the Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito in California, and I picked up a brochure that talked about the whale bus program that they had over there. But I realized that this program no longer runs. It was quite a number of years ago. But anyway, they had decked out a little school bus with all things whales, and they would go to schools to teach kids about whales that are just off the Californian coast. And at the time, I thought, this is so cool. And what if I could bring something like that to Malaysia? And if only we could tour around the whole country. My God, that would be so cool, because a lot of Malaysians actually don't even know that we have whales and dolphins in Malaysia. A lot of people think that these animals are temperate water species and that they're just passing through our waters, or that they're lost, or that they're vagrants. But actually, we have local tropical species of marine mammals inhabiting our waters, right? So I thought, what if we could up our outreach and education program, right? Pump it up into this thing like the whale bus and take it all around the country. That would be so cool. But it was one of those where you sort of get carried away in a daydream, and then you snap out of it and you tell yourself, okay, but it's going to cost a lot of money. And where am I going to find this money to travel around the country with a bus or a lorry or whatever? It was inspired by that visit to the Marine Mammal Center. And I think 2 years or a year after that experience or that encounter with this concept in California, we had the opportunity to apply for a local corporate grant. And I thought, this is my chance. This is the chance to just propose it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? They might just say, no, it's a crazy idea. We don't want to spend so much money. So yeah, we put together a proposal. It was part of a bigger project, but it was a big component within the larger proposal. And then we just threw caution to the wind, and let's see
That's
what
what you got to
happens.
do. Nice.
Yeah, and then they
Nice.
approved it, and I thought, oh my God, it's really happening. But before we actually took it on a nationwide tour, we had a smaller grant where we were able to test it out in at a smaller scale in just one locality, and it didn't get as much traction as I had hoped, but I think it's just because of the location. And sometimes advertising events is not very easy or attracting people. But it gave us a taste of what a whale bus thing could be like. So when we had the opportunity for the larger corporate grant, we decided, let's try to do a nationwide tour, right?
Brilliant.
Yeah, and so it's called the Whales on the Wheels Mobile Marine Exhibition nationwide tour. I know it's a
That's
long,
catchy.
yeah, but Wheels on the Wheels, or
Wheels
wow,
on Wheels, yeah, cool.
wow. We
Wheels
call it
on
wow.
Wheels. I like that.
So we wow people with it. Yeah, so we've traveled all across Peninsular Malaysia, to many public schools, many public locations. We've even had requests for some at
Nice.
private international schools locally. And we've reached more than 20,000 people, kids, adults alike, coming and just learning about whales and dolphins and dugongs in Malaysia. So the 3-ton truck, or lorry as we call it at home, is decked out like a photo gallery, and all the photographs on the inside of that container of that lorry are all the photographs that we have taken on all our fieldwork. None of it was taken off the internet or from somebody else. They were all our own photos. And the whole idea was to show people that these animals exist here, right? And then we had a display of dolphin skulls to show people what they look like. We had a soundboard. So one of my team members is a bioacoustician, Saliza, and so we created this soundboard where you can press different buttons to hear what a dolphin sounds like, what an orca sounds like, what a humpback whale sounds like. what a weddell seal sounds like. Do you know what a weddell seal sounds
I
like?
have no idea.
It sounds like a lightsaber,
Oh,
sci-fi,
really?
Star Wars kind of sound.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's a seal, you know?
Please excuse the interruption. I couldn't resist looking up a Weddell seal, and they do sound very cool. So here you go.
And then we had a corner for them to learn a little bit about local marine specimens. And then outside, we erect these tents where we have different stations for visitors to learn about sustainability. We have this game called decomposition game where we put different materials out and diapers, cigarette butts, tin cans, plastic bag, whatever, and we have them guess how long does it take to break down.
So it's more environmental education. It's not.
Yeah.
It's in order to help the whales and dolphins.
Yes.
You have to go to the bigger
Yes.
picture. I imagine that a lot of your work is dealing with human impacts. But is there any aspect of your work which is I don't think with marine species you do much hands-on stuff. You're not dealing with entanglement stuff, are you? Or does that come up?
We are.
yeah?
Since 2023, we began our bycatch mitigation program, whereby we have been working with local fishermen. First of all, we had to survey the different fishing villages and fish landing sites to determine where there were people we could approach. And then we would approach them and get a sense of what kind of fisheries are they involved in, what kind of fishing gear they're involved in, and whether they have a bycatch issue or depredation issue. So depredation is when a dolphin or a porpoise
Catching their fish.
they steals fish off the net, and in the process it causes the net to be damaged. And when the net is damaged, it costs the fishermen time and opportunity. Right, they can't go out to fish and stuff like that. It costs money. So we had to identify where there were fishes and if anybody of them had depredation or bycatch problem. And then we had to tell them about what we were trying to do. We have these acoustic pingers. They're called banana pingers that we purchased.
Like a deterrent?
They're like a deterrent by way of it emitting a very high frequency ping every few seconds, which is inaudible to the human ear and supposedly inaudible to the fish as well. Only the dolphins can hear them.
Okay.
So the idea is that we were going to we had funding to purchase these pingers from the UK and then distribute them to the fishermen who were willing to participate and have them attach it to their nets and have them trial it out for us. So of course we had a control where we would interact also with fishermen that did not have pingers on their nets. And then we had to get the ones with pingers to report back to us whether the pingers were affecting their fish catch. So they had to record for us how much they were catching on days that they were using pingers, maybe on days that they were not using pingers. And then, of course, their peers, their friends who were not using pingers at all. And where possible, we wanted them to record the response of the dolphins.
If they
If they left or they ran away or if they were attracted to it and things like that. We would run our own field observations as well. So we would experimentally put pingers on the net and deploy it near dolphins. But of course, we have to be very careful not to, have the dolphins get caught in the nets that we deploy experimentally. So it's just been really a whole trial and error thing where we're trying to see, does it work? But I think the biggest challenge initially was recruiting fishers to the initiative, because when we first approached them, they were like, who are you?
Yeah.
And then, are you like a cover up? Are you trying to spy? Are you an enforcement agency? Are you trying to spy on us to see if we're illegally fishing or whatever? So it took a while for us to sit with them, explain to them, show them the pingers, show them examples of how it's worked in some other parts of the world, and then hopefully the idea was that they would join us, and then if it works and if it's effective, their fisher friends would also feel confident in participating. So we just needed to begin with, we needed 1 or 2 fishers to participate. And I think since then, now we've got about almost 40 that we've engaged with. Over time, it just increased because people felt more confident to join the program, seeing that their friend
Yeah.
didn't have a problem with fish catch. It didn't reduce. And the dolphins were staying away from the nets, so they didn't get their nets damaged or their catch stolen,
Oh, right.
right? Yeah, so
And
we've done that.
so there's the bycatch and conflict with fishermen with dolphins. Um, when you're working with whales, that's offshore, and so presumably that's a different issue. Is that more like impact from vessels and things like that, or yeah? What are the range of threats that these various species are facing?
I think bycatch is one of the most grave or biggest issues that we face for all the marine mammals, not just in Malaysia, but all around the world. Um, and of course, underwater noise pollution is another thing of concern. In Malaysia, underwater noise pollution is not currently a recognized threat. Like it's not something that's legally recognized, where you, when I say legally recognized, meaning there is no law that states that, you have to be below a certain decibel or whatever, or adjust your engines to fit certain sound range to protect marine life. I'm hoping in the future, with the acoustic work that we're doing, we can have a strong enough case to put forth a proposal or recommendation to our decision makers to consider um, making underwater noise pollution something that is regulated, especially in the large sort of commercial vessels, shipping industry, etc.
It's even an issue terrestrially, where because it's something I'm pretty sensitive to noise, and I like peace, but when you actually try to find peace, which is like the absence of man-made noise or human-made noise, um, it's really hard. Like
Yes.
it's so difficult,
Yeah.
and there are so few places where you can get even 15 minutes without a plane flying overhead or something. And I think planes are more kind of localized than boats. Boats seem to be everywhere. So and sound travels much further in the marine environment, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And marine mammals require sound for navigation more than their eyesight, especially like in Malaysia where the water can be quite turbid. Definitely, they would require sound rather than vision, right? So if we go back to the story of the baby dugong that I saw underwater, um, where it was chirping away looking for mom, right? That's how it found mom in the end. We think it found mom anyway by sound. So definitely underwater noise pollution is an issue we hope we can look into in the near future. I've mentioned bycatch, habitat degradation from pollution, from coastal development. Pollution is a big thing.
But pollution can be many forms, right? I mean, it's in the marine environment. There's like chemical pollution.
Yeah.
Is there more run? Is the turbidity? Would that be natural anyway? That there would be some.
Yeah.
Is it exacerbated by human activity and runoff? And
I mean, in certain areas, yes, there's a lot of human activity and runoff. But in the coastal areas, the water is turbid because of just the way the marine environment is. We have mangroves, mud flats, silty
lots of
seabeds,
sedimenty
and
stuff.
things like that. Then, of course, the runoff and things just makes everything worse. We do have clearer waters slightly further offshore and around our offshore islands, but also just habitat degradation from marine debris pollution. So much mismanaged waste on land gets washed into drains, into rivers, and then out to sea. It's incredibly heartbreaking for me each time that we have been offshore studying whales. We're literally offshore where there's no more land mass in sight. I'm in the middle of the sea, right? About 70 to 100 kilometers from shore. I can't see any island anymore. I can't see the coastline. And suddenly we come across these large floating islands of trash
Really?
as far as your eye can see to the horizon,
Wow.
right? And it's like a supermarket, right? You could get anything from these. I've seen baseball caps, uh, I've seen teddy bears, lots and lots of drinking water bottles,
Oh, yes.
plastic bags, bicycle seat, helmet, toothbrush, combs, anything. And
And that's a direct threat. If I mean, maybe not when it's in an island, but bits of plastic get ingested, right?
so the thing is, these large floating patches of trash, a lot of times they are caught with ghost nets. We've rescued several sea turtles from these floating islands of trash because they get caught up in the nets. We've had a case where a ghost net washed ashore on the beach at a resort, and they managed to release a turtle that was still alive, just hanging in there, released it, but there was a turtle that was dead, and then there was the skull of a bottlenose dolphin attached to the ghost net.
Wow.
So that means this net has been floating at sea for a long time. The dolphin got caught and has completely decomposed, right, to bits, leaving only the skull behind. The turtle must have been a recent addition and luckily got saved. So in the area where we see a lot of this is one of it is our field site where we're studying our Brodus whales, and these whales they feed by gulping large volumes of seawater where there's fish, small fish, anchovies, and smaller fish, and then they use their tongue to push the water out through the baleen plates,
It's like a filter.
which is like a filter, and then they swallow the fish, and so we've seen them feed near these areas that sometimes have these floating islands of trash, and I often wonder how many times or how often do these whales ingest this marine debris. So then there's the stuff that you can see, and then there's the microplastic stuff,
Of course.
because the stuff
That's
that you can't
terrifying.
see,
Yeah.
right? So it's so many layers. This problem is so layered, so complex, and it starts from shore. It starts from the land, and whenever I think about it, I feel suffocated because it's such a huge problem. It's beyond me. It's beyond Marecet, and it needs systemic change. It needs behavioral change from the population at large. It's not something that we can just fix with one little project or a campaign. How do you stem the trash from?
Yeah, you're kind of making life more difficult. If you can, like the convenience of having a plastic bottle is, I can totally understand it.
Yeah.
I've been somewhere and I'm thirsty, and so it's like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a drink. So the behavior change is really quite challenging because it's how do you compete with that? But that's where I think we've got to get the triple bottom line, environmental, social, and economic sustainability recognized instead of just the economics. That's the challenge. So, I mean, you're working towards that with the outreach of kids. It's just we haven't got quite enough time, I would say. That's what I always think when we're doing work with kids. It's like, this is great, and this is going to safeguard things into the future. Are there more immediate things you're doing? Do you dabble in any policy stuff, or is there other aspects of your work that might lead to this systemic change or can contribute?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly trying to empower people with more information and knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. And we try to do it at so many different levels, like local community level, local council level, state government level, federal government level, general public, friends and family, whatever, right? Um, so we do that. But also, one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, science forms the foundation of Marecet's work. So, what we do is not only do we translate our scientific results into the education programs that we run with kids or the general public, but we also ensure that it gets into recommendations when the government is drafting national plan of actions, shoreline management plan, some kind of management plan, or intervention plan, mitigation plan, all these kinds of stuff. We ensure that our findings are provided for them as they draft these plans, and that we provide them with suggestions on what needs to be considered, what needs to be done. And every year, where possible, we try to arrange for a meeting with the agency who's responsible for managing marine mammals in the country, and we arrange for a meeting to present to them our work, our key findings, and from there what needs to be done and how can we work together to find solutions at the various levels to better protect marine mammals and their habitats. Now, the thing is, I always say in Malaysia, marine mammals are protected by law. You can't hunt them, kill them, keep them, eat them, all that kind of stuff. So hunting and all that is not an issue. People know it's protected, but their habitat is not protected, right? So I always say, what good is a person if they didn't have a home?
No.
Like it's not a nice feeling, right? And so we need to look after the habitat because marine animals, not just marine mammals, any animal, um, marine animals thrive. It's like the forest. If you have a healthy forest, all the wildlife in it thrive. Same thing. If you have a healthy marine ecosystem, whatever marine life lives in that ecosystem will thrive. So it's so important to remember not just to protect the animals itself, but their home. And currently, we don't have any protected areas per se in the country that has been dedicated to marine mammals. I always feel that marine mammals, because they are apex predators, they sit at the top of the food web, right? They act as this umbrella. If you protect them and their habitat, you protect everything else. It's so important that we do that, and we're hoping to try and push for more of that in the future, whereby we can consider more areas that would protect core and important marine mammal habitats, so that we protect everything else within it. And actually, through the work that we've been doing, three of our field sites are now internationally recognized by the IUCN as important marine mammal areas, or
Fantastic.
IMAs as we call them.
Right.
There are 5 in total in Malaysia. 3 of it are in Peninsular Malaysia, in the areas where Marecet works. And how the process works is that you need to nominate an area. And kind of like publishing in a scientific journal, the nomination goes through a peer review process by an international panel. And you need to have sufficient data and information to support the nomination. You can't just put links from YouTube or TikTok or stuff like it. It needs to be supported by some
Right.
kind of substantial data. So the work that we've done in the last decade or so contributed to the nomination of these 3 sites where we work. And there was sufficient data to support those nominations. So in 2019, the IUCN decided that, okay, these pass. They passed the test or the evaluation, and they are now recognized as important marine mammal areas. It doesn't give legal basis for protection,
It's a step towards
but
it, though.
it helps us leverage it
Yeah.
to the decision makers to say, hey, internationally, this area has been recognized as being important. So locally now, we need to localize the conservation action. And when I say that, I don't mean that the whole area needs to be uh, uh, closed off. It becomes a no take, no entry, nothing zone. Because we have to work with local stakeholders. We have to work with people who are using the area, whether commercially, artisanally, etc. Right? So it's about how can we manage the area better? Do we need to have speed limits in place? Do we need to have certain time or space restrictions in place, right? And we can do that if we have the science to back us up, because we know, okay, this area is important as a feeding ground throughout the year or throughout parts of the year, right? Stuff like that. So yeah, we ensure that our work has impact on policy, on decision making, and just sort of casting light on aspects of legal stuff that when government agencies have to take into consideration for making new policies, new laws, new acts, that the data is there to help them make an informed decision. I can't make those decisions, right? We can't, but we can provide them with the means to make those decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. It strikes me, we're talking about so just diverse things, and the foundation of it, of course, is the science and the good data. But you, as a leader, you've come in and you bring this suite of skills and attributes. Have you intentionally worked on different areas? Like, have you said, okay, I really need this skill set because I'm going to work with communications, or I've got to work with policy, or I've got to. It's so diverse, and it's incredible that you can have all these hats, kind of thing. Was that an intentional thing that you worked on, or have you been kind of surprised and found yourself, oh well, I need to learn this as well? And tell me a bit more about that kind of experience for you going from, you start an organization and you're just like, oh, it's dolphins, and then here you are.
Certainly, when we first started, for me, it was like, this is it. My childhood dream has come true. I'm going to be a dolphin scientist. I'm going to study dolphins for the rest of my life and live happily ever after. Then you realize that there's so many moving pieces. There's so many different stakeholders, groups of people that you have to work with. And you realize that while it's great to be in the field studying dolphins, dugongs, or whales, the act of studying them alone is not conservation. The act of studying them is a part of the process, needing the information to be able to make a statement or a lobby. So, in that process, you realize that you need to then learn to communicate the science. You need to learn how to make it palatable to the general public out there. And not everyone shares the same passion as me or my team, right? Not everyone loves the environment or sees its importance. There have been so many people who have told me to go and get a real job because why are you studying like working in a bank is probably more relevant and important than being out in the field with a camera, photographing dolphins, things like that. So I've had to learn how to of course communicate, and I think one of the steepest learning curve was when I realized that conservation is human caused, right? We have conservation problems because humans, yeah, right?
Yeah.
So it is the human society that we need to work with to find those solutions. But how do people are so diverse in the way they think, in the way they behave, their personality, their character, right? And you can't just go up to someone and say, hey, stop using plastic bags and stop polluting this. I mean, you can't do that. Stop chopping down the trees, right? They might gawk back at you and say, what? Right? So I realized that, okay, there's an art to understanding human behavior and how people operate. What makes them tick? What's going to make them buy into this important mission of protecting our collective planet? I'm not doing this because it's a hobby, because it's my first love or passion. It's that this is a shared responsibility of being an inhabitant of this planet. And then there was also the art of how do we negotiate at the discussion table with decision makers? How do we get the message across without appearing like we're trying to take over their jobs or their authority? That's not the case at all. For me as a scientist, I've done my science, but I'm obligated to share that work in an understandable way that the science can be applied for good. So I've really had to think about how I speak, how I frame my thoughts, how I frame the delivery of my messaging, and of course that of Marecet's, and keeping up with the changing times. Right, we live in a digital era, social media era. When it comes to social media, I'm definitely a fossil. I'm a dinosaur, right? But I have a team. They're within this social media generation, and I leave it to them to do the social media stuff. But I'm constantly thinking. I'm always having ideas in my mind. I might not be able to execute it myself because
Right.
I'm not creative or digitally inclined, but I'll have an idea. And I think what's important is to identify people that you can work with to bring those ideas to life, to get the messaging out to the target audiences that
Yeah.
you want, whether it's a local community, whether it's the internet, whether it's government agency, right? And
I,
so,
I like your humility there, where it's like, and I think that is the mark of a good leader, is where you say, well, I might not know the social media piece, but I'll find somebody that does, not feeling insecure about having somebody who does something better than you, because you can conduct the orchestra, is how I like to think of it. But they might play the instrument better than you, and I think that is, for sort of future leaders, that's a really important sort of attribute, to have that humility. And so,
I mean, I still remember the day when I said to one of my team members, and I said it sort of under my breath, I said, okay, you guys can go and open a TikTok account for Marecet. And they were like, what? I said, don't make me repeat myself. I said, as long as I don't have to manage it, as long as I don't have to do it myself, You guys can open an account and make fun videos, to get Marecet's message out. It's also how can we remain relevant in a world where and in Asia, doing this kind of work is really still looked upon as like just doodling around and not a real job, right? You're not doing a real job. You're not a doctor, engineer, lawyer, banker, financier, whatever. People can't see the importance of what we do and why protecting dolphins means protecting the sea that we rely on so much, right? So I'm constantly having to think of how can we make our work relevant? How can we make the science relevant? How can we translate that into morsels of acceptable information, relatable information? And I'm not a creative person in the sense that I can't paint or I can't draw to save my life, but I do enjoy art, and I do enjoy the creative industry, theater and musicals and things like that. And I'm constantly thinking of how can we innovate our work to have that science and arts bridge,
I love it.
right?
I love it because that's the thing is like it's all these different ways to get the message out there.
Yeah.
And just trying different things, and you never know what might suddenly be a huge success.
Yeah, exactly.
But
And I think understanding as well how I'm not very good at it, but like conservation financing and understanding how to do
yeah,
fundraising effectively and innovatively. I mean, those are things that really has been a huge learning curve.
yeah.
I
But it's
s-
you need it. We all need the funding to make the work happen, don't we?
yeah.
That ties in with the go and get a real job thing. For you, as you wanted to become a conservationist and you became a conservationist, was there pushback from family or friends? Did you face any challenges there? Or?
Very, very thankfully, my family, especially my parents, have been supportive from day zero or day one. They were nervous when I said I wanted to do this as a teenager. They were like, is this just a passing phase?" And I know they were concerned, like, is she going to be able to hold a good job one day as an adult, right? But I think them being the supportive parents that they are, they just wanted to support my dream, even if it made them nervous. And my dad said to me, "You have one shot, make it count." And I worked really hard to achieve the dream. So they were fine, but it was their friends.
Oh,
It was their friends who would be like trying to tell my parents to convince me to not go down this path. It's like, your daughter, she has such good grades. It's such a shame if she's not going to pursue medicine or law or engineering. Try to convince her. I mean, are there even going to be dolphins in Malaysia for her to study when she returns someday? Is she even going to get a job?
wow.
Right? I'm sure in 6 months' time, whatever she's doing is going to go bust and run out of funds. You should really, So they were trying to tell my parents to convince me otherwise.
What do
But
they?
my parents never convinced me otherwise. They were just like, and my dad said, "You have one shot, make it count." So certainly there was that. This was before I was going to go for university to study marine science. So they discouraged us. They discouraged me then. And then when I finally returned to Malaysia and started working, and when Fairul and I decided, okay, we're gonna finally get Marecet established. We wanted to do our own thing and to do work in the way that we thought was effective and needed. Then came the next wave of negative comments. Why don't you just join forces with a established large NGO? Are there even dolphins for you to save in Malaysia? Where are you going to get funding? How are you going to fund yourself? Right? In 6 months'
Mm,
time, it's all going to fall flat on the face
wow.
and fail. How are you going to sustain yourself? Maricet's 13 years old now. We have including me, we're a staff membership of 12. We have multiple projects all across the country. And we've built a portfolio and a name for ourselves. So
Yeah.
people thought we wouldn't last beyond 6 months, and here we are.
So what do they say now, or what do your parents?
I mean, my parents are obviously very proud of
Proud,
me. I
yeah.
don't know about those friends who tried to discourage me. My dad certainly, is always talking about our work and how proud he is of all that I've achieved. So,
Nice.
yeah, no, it's been, even Fairul, he didn't always have support from his family. Because again, it was like, are you gonna succeed? what I hope, if there's anything that we achieve, what I do hope to show people is that just because something's never been done doesn't mean it can't be done,
Brilliant.
right?
Yeah.
Just give it a go. Just try. What's the worst that can happen? You fail, and then you either pick yourself up and try again, or do something else, pivot it differently, right? I always think that this work career that I've been able to be very fortunate to live, I was the author of this path, and I think it's important to identify that, as I said, just because it's not been done doesn't mean it can't be done. And if you have a dream and you have a vision and you have a mission that you really strongly believe in, um, it's not easy, but it's not impossible. We've had a lot of dips.
Hmm.
Definitely, there were things that we tried that didn't work. Of course, there were days that I thought, "Oh, let's just throw the towel in and call it a day." Of course, right? But it's how you innovate yourself. How do you innovate your work? And that's where I've had to be. The learning curve was so steep. How do I deal with people? How do I pivot this project to be this way so that it's more palatable? How do I change things around so that the funder would be more willing to fund the program, but we can still reach our goals and our mission? How do I communicate with the decision makers that we need to do this or that? How do I communicate with funders to tell them that how they want to fund the project is not necessarily what the project needs, but that we need support in this way
Yeah.
or that way to make it a success. And if the project is a success, it's a good reflection on their philanthropy and their support, right? So just having to learn all these different ways. How do we make our work relevant on social media? How can we create creative content, whether it's short videos, um, documentary, books, etc., that will really make us stand out in terms of what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? The latest thing that I'm trying to do now is to ensure that we don't leave people behind in our work. The sea is mostly, I think the planet, the world out there is largely accessible to people who are able-bodied or without disability, or who are just in mainstream society, right?
Hmm.
But I feel more and more now, and especially now that we've established ourselves as a conservation organization, um, how can we be more inclusive in the work that we do? I believe that the ocean, the sea is for everyone to enjoy. It doesn't matter if you're a healthy, normal person with no issues, or you have some kind of disability. The sea is there to heal us, to empower us, to enrich us in ways that it does, right? So in this past year and in the next few years to come, one of the things that I want Marecet to branch out is to be more inclusive in the outreach work that we do. So we want to work with kids from marginalized, underserved communities, more rural communities, kids who maybe grow up in a coastal area or an island but don't necessarily have a lot of exposure or access to the sea that's in their backyard. And just giving kids that experience, you know, even if they had a disability, let's just say, if the kids were uh, blind, visually impaired. But what if, this is my dream, what if we could work with these kids and take them to the seashore for them to just listen to what the sea sounds like, what the sand on their
Yeah.
feet feels like, right? What a shell feels like in their hand, or giving them a figurine of a dolphin and having them feel it and telling them this is a dolphin, it lives in the sea,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So, innovating the work to reach more people. I think that's the bottom line, is that what I want to do is to reach more people. I think that's
I think
important.
that's fantastic because you've spoken of hope and just the need to just, I think for you the mission is so clear that it's just a matter of working out how to get there, because
Yeah.
it's you're not going to be stopped by some small little roadblock, it seems. And I think that's really fantastic. I feel like we could keep talking for hours. I think so. I think I'm going to have to come and visit, and we'll do.
Please
I
do.
said to someone else, I was like, we need a better backdrop. But thank you for everything you do, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Sam.
If you enjoyed that conversation with Louisa and you want to help dolphins, dugongs, and whales, you can by simply liking the video and share it with someone who wouldn't otherwise find it. To help us reach more people with these conservation stories, please subscribe to Saving Wildlife with Sam. At the moment, we're aiming to have a new conversation every 2 weeks. Marecet has all sorts of social channels, and there are links to them in the show notes. And as always, if there were questions you would have liked me to ask, help me improve the podcast and let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for your support.